Hey everybody, it's Dr. Karen, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about attention span and what is normal and what you can do if you have a child who is struggling with remote learning and maintaining focus. So first of all, there are a lot of questions as far as what should I be expecting from my child when it comes to remote learning and having to just sit on Zoom calls all day instead of really being interactive in their classroom like they normally would. And if you have a child who already was distractible and needed a little bit of extra accountability to pay attention, then obviously being on a Zoom call or being on in a remote learning environment does present some challenges. So I wanted to start off today by talking about a little bit just what we can expect from kids as far as attention span and how the activity can have an impact on your child's ability to maintain focus during that task and some factors to consider. But then also what we can do when it comes to the situation that we're in right now. So there are a number of different ideas about what's normal when it comes to paying attention. I hate to use the word normal because there are so many factors within what you can consider, but typically a lot of experts will say that kids can typically attend for 2 to 3 minutes per year of age. So basically, if you take their age and multiply it by 2 or 3, then that is going to be the range of attention span that you might expect for them to be able to do for any given activity. Some experts have said up to 5 minutes per year of age, but some people think, that's a little bit long, that's pushing it. So for example, if you had a child that was 10, and we're using the 2 to 3 minutes per year of age benchmark, then that means that a child who is 10 years old should be able to attend to a task for about 20 to 30 minutes. So if you keep that in mind, thinking about, okay, we've got kids who are younger than that, who are having to sit through maybe a class that's a little bit longer than that. And now that they're having to do it online, that makes it even harder. So how do we ensure that kids are actually paying attention during these times? And how is it even working before we were in a remote learning situation? So when we kind of understand that, I think that can help to figure out, all right, what can I actually do to get the most out of this situation? So obviously in a classroom, a lot of times, regardless of the age, even if it is, let's say, a kindergarten classroom, they might have a 45-minute period where they're working on a certain type of skill. And that, again, it's longer than that child's typical attention span. But what they do, usually what teachers will do often, is that they won't have that entire 40 minutes be the same activity. There might be some transitions. So for example, they might do one thing for 10 minutes and then it's, all right, we're going to shift and transition and focus on a different activity. And so there's some switching in there. So it's okay if kids aren't paying attention for the entire 40 minutes because there are those transitions where they can kind of get a break and then refocus so that they can actually get the most benefit out of that 40-minute period. Now, it's a lot harder to manage those types of things when you're doing class online. So if you have a child who's got to just kind of sit there and do the same thing and look at a screen for 20 to 30 minutes, well, that makes it a lot harder. And I would argue that even though, let's say for a 10-year-old, if we're going to use that example, they might be able to attend for 20 to 30 minutes. That's going to be a lot harder for them to do if it is a task that is less engaging as opposed to something that is in person. So even though there are certain normal attention spans, I would say that you could probably expect those to be at the bottom of the range or maybe a little bit less if you are in a situation that is not as engaging and interesting, and also in an environment where there might be a lot of other distractions. A lot of times kids, if they are in a kind of a makeshift desk that was made because we had to figure out where are kids going to do their remote learning during the pandemic. That means that it might be a little bit more distracting. Kids might not be in the right mindset of this is where I do school and learn. And then also, if you're on a computer, there's a lot of things that you could potentially click on. Yes, there are things in the classroom, but they're not right in front of the kids, and other people can see what they're doing. Whereas if you're doing a remote learning situation, there could be pets walking into the room, somebody else walking by. They could turn their camera off. There are a lot of things that make it harder for kids to stay accountable. So I would say that keep those attention spans in mind, but also know that there are things that are going to make those typical spans less and less likely to actually happen if there are other distractions. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you have a child who has certain sensory needs or just certain social needs, remote learning is probably going to be harder for them to attend to than a regular classroom if they are a child who, for example, gets a lot of energy from being around people. I know that I have a stepdaughter who likes to be around people, and so she finds activities that have personal interaction, especially in-person interaction, to be a lot more energizing than just sitting at a screen where there's not that deep connection between people. I mean, even though you can talk to people online, it's not the same as in person. So for her, doing something online like that is an energy draining task, and doing something in person is more of an energizing task for her. So something that is more energizing, that attention span that she has is going to be a lot longer for those tasks that she enjoys. So if you have a child who's really a people person and just loves to be around people, or just even benefits from knowing that there's a person sitting right there that can tell if they're fidgeting with something, then that's going to make a big impact on attention span as well. And the other thing to consider too is if you have a child who likes to get up and move around and likes to be very active, and they have had to sit for a long period of time doing something that is kind of an energy draining rather than an energizing activity for them, as you go throughout the day, that attention span is going to become less and less, and it might be towards the bottom end of their range that they can do. So maybe they might be a little bit better in the morning, but if they've had to do something that is wearing on them and it's the end of the day or the end of the week, or months and months of the same type of thing that is harder for them, then a lot of times there is going to be that fatigue, and you will see that even though there is kind of a general range of what is expected based on research, you might be seeing kids that are towards the bottom end of what they are capable of. Now that we understand that, it's kind of like, well, what do we do about it? Because obviously for a number of reasons, we might not have access to regular school at this time. So obviously the first thing that you can do is just understand your child's current status and understand why, what things are causing them to have a lower attention span than you might expect based on their abilities. So number one, I would be aware of just their social and sensory needs. So if there's somebody who is not getting enough of those things that are energizing for them, you want to make sure that you work those into your day, and even during the school day. If you are able to have access to them during the school day and give them a chance to do some of those things that may help them recharge during the school day, then they're not going to get as fatigued. So maybe if they like to come out and chat with you a certain number of times, you are planning for them to have certain times to do that, if that's something that you're able to do. If they need movement breaks, if they need just time to step away from their computer and stand up, those types of things are going to be things that you're going to want to work in. But then also, it's good to understand where they are right now. So, for example, if you have a child that can only attend for about 5 minutes at a time, expecting them to go a 30-minute class period and just sit there in front of the computer and not get up at all, it's going to be a lot for them. So maybe you, even though most of their class is expected to sit there for the entire 30 minutes, if on your end, as you're monitoring this as a parent, if maybe they can go, if you can stretch that 10 minutes and maybe give them a couple quick little breaks during that 30-minute period, even though it's not ideal, you want to get them to eventually be able to sit down for longer and participate for longer. If you can understand where they are right now and figure out, all right, how long can they sit and focus without needing to get up? Where are they now? And understand that, because if you say, okay, well, you were at about 5 minutes and now we're going to expect you to sit down the entire 30 to 40 minutes without getting up or without getting distracted, well, or needing to be redirected, that might not be realistic. Maybe you figure out, all right, how many times, how long are they able to focus? How many times are they getting up? And all right, what's the next step towards what we want, where we want them to be? So the first step for you, just kind of be aware of what's going on in those environments, what your child's needs are, when are they starting to get fatigued, and where are they at now? Because that's going to be your first step in figuring out, okay, what's the next stage? Because your end goal might be to have them sit and work for the entire class period. You might want that eventually, but a step in the right direction is, maybe that they are sitting for most of the class period, or maybe they're only getting up a couple times. You've got to figure out where they are right now to figure out how to get towards that end goal. It's kind of like if you wanted to run a marathon, but you haven't run it all. Well, the first day wouldn't be to go run a marathon. You might run a couple miles, for example. So figure out where you are, figure out where they are, and then go from there. So I'm going to share a link from this information that I'm reading about attention span. Again, not affiliated with this website. I just thought it was helpful. Also, if you found this video helpful and you want to learn more about how to improve attention and focus and productivity in your kids, I will also share my free guide to learning how to do that. Learning the first steps in understanding how to help your kids be independent and motivated, based on understanding some of the key skills that tend to get in the way, so that you can have an idea of what's exactly going on with your kids so that you know how to help them. So I will share that free guide as well in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching.